morning. Welcome to today's Brunch Bunch, your long-term financial plan, connecting the dots. Brunch Bunch is a monthly gathering of people living with disabilities, their family members, advocates, and professionals to explore a variety of issues and to share resources. Brunch Bunch is a partnership with the ARC Prince George's County, Prince George's Community Resources, and the Archdiocese of Washington Department of Special Needs Ministries. Since March, we have been meeting virtually to continue our gatherings. We have explored resources for virtual activities to supporting loved ones living with mental illness. We do hope to gather again in person soon. Please stay connected with us to receive updates and information on future Brunch Bunch events. My name is Rachel Chung, and I am the Disabilities Coordinator with the Archdiocese of Washington Department of Special Needs Ministries. Our other planning members include Melanie Clark with the ARC Prince George's County and Pam Rosansky with Prince George's Community Resources. Later in our presentation, we will all welcome Eric Jorgensen, a special needs navigator who will show us how connecting the dots is important for long-term financial planning. So again, welcome everyone. As we begin our webinar, everyone will remain muted. There is a question box on your control panel. Please use this box for any comments or questions for our panelists today. We also welcome any resources you may want to share with people today. We will allow time at the end of the presentation for your questions. Resources and other handouts are available with this webinar, including a PDF version of the PowerPoint. If you are not able to access any of these handouts, please contact a member of the Brunch Bunch team, and we will be glad to assist you. Also, please note, the webinar is being recorded and will be available as a YouTube video on the Archdiocese of Washington Department of Special Needs Ministries tab. So for today, let us start with a thought. Why plan? Why should we think about our financial future when today there's so many pressing problems that we are dealing with? So we know there's lots of different resources and ways that we can think about our planning, especially if we have a loved one living with disabilities. We will have to think about a lifetime of supports for that person. How will they live their best life, and how can we make that happen? Maybe we would like to retire too, as ourselves, as parents, and sometimes we know grandparents are also caring for a loved one living with disabilities. How can we create multiple ways to ensure that our loved one, again, is secured for the future with multiple sources of income? And of course, if anyone here today has a loved one in the school system, that planning becomes even more critical as they enter new systems of adult services and changes indeed happen. So please let me turn it over to our speaker today, Eric Jorgensen. And Eric has presented with us before at the Brunch Bunch. And again, we're so glad to have you back again, Eric. So welcome to today's Brunch Bunch.
Thank you, Rachel. Looking forward to this.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we will turn it over to you. And again, we were discussing before, if people are thinking of questions, feel free to go ahead and type it into that question box as we go on. So thank you, Eric. We'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. So the first slide we're going to go over is just going to be an overview of topics that I think most of the families are probably familiar with, at least to some degree. So with life insurance, I want to make sure people understand there are two types. You have term, which means it's going to run out after a certain time or a certain age, or you have permanent, which will last as long as you do. You typically get life insurance from either a financial advisor or an insurance agent. You can buy it online at places like Policy Genius or something like that, websites like that, but I recommend people work with either a financial advisor or an insurance agent to make sure they're getting the right type of insurance and the right amount. Special needs trusts This is another area where you have two types. You have a first party or a third party. A first party means it's the money of the individual with the disability. The third party means it's everybody else's money or assets. So if you have a child and they don't have anything in their name, then all you need is a third party trust. If you have a child who has a bank account or grandparents have left them some money, that might have to go into a first party trust. And for special needs trust, you're looking to work with a special needs attorney. You can find special needs attorneys on the Academy of Special Needs Planners or Special Needs Alliance, find an attorney tool. Or you can, I'm sure the ARC of PG or the Archdiocese of Washington, I'm sure you guys also have attorneys that you can refer families to. ABLE accounts are accounts that are designed to help individuals with disabilities accumulate money and save money more than the $2,000 allowed if you're collecting SSI without affecting benefits. And I'm being very high level on purpose here. You know, the time constraints, any one of these could be their own and have been their own presentations. So when you're using an ABLE account, you use it for qualified disability expenses, and that could be food, housing. It could be, you know, paying for co-payments for a doctor. It could be getting an iPad for a child who's using that to help communicate, that type of stuff. Social Security, you have SSI, Supplemental Security Income. In 2020, the maximum benefit for that is $783 per month. Next year, the benefit goes up to $794 a month, and that is the federal maximum. Sometimes people will only receive 2/3 of that benefit because they can't, Social Security believes that the individual with the disability is receiving what's called in-kind support and maintenance, or ISM. And that's typically when Social Security feels you are not charging enough rent and the individual is living with you, so they are receiving that housing at not enough of a cost. And the only other thing I'll say about charging rent is if you are charging rent, technically you should be claiming that as income on your taxes. SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Income, matters because if you have a child who was disabled before the age of 22, they may become eligible for the disabled adult child benefit, which means they're going to receive 50% of your retirement or Social Security benefit when you retire, become disabled. And that increases to 75% of your benefit when you die. So an example there is if you're receiving $2,000 in retirement, your child's benefit will go from $783 a month of SSI to a $1,000 a month benefit from SSDI. Medicaid is health insurance. When you are approved for SSI, you automatically are enrolled in Medicaid. Medicare is also health insurance, but it has 4 parts to it: Part A, B, C, and D. Part A is hospital insurance, Part B is medical insurance, Part D is going to be prescription drugs, and then Part C may be a supplement or maybe a Medigap policy. And then finally, you have waivers, which are paid for by Medicaid. So in order to be eligible for a waiver, you have to meet the eligibility requirements for Medicaid. One other note, step back, for Medicare, the reason I bring it up is if you have a child who's receiving the disabled adult child benefit, 24 months after they become eligible for the disabled adult child benefit and start receiving SSDI, they start receiving Medicare, and you can be eligible for Medicaid and Medicare at the same time, but you have to remain eligible for Medicaid by keeping your child's assets below $2,000, and they have to meet income requirements. If you want your child to receive DDA services in the state of Maryland, they have to be eligible for Medicaid, and that's through the waiver system. So now I'm going to get into a very complicated picture. I'm warning you ahead of time, but I wanted to make sure you guys understood, or at least had a very, very basic understanding of what these terms mean. So let's get into the really complicated picture.
And Eric, I know we said we'll save questions at the end, but we did have a quick initial one about funeral insurance. Will that be mentioned in this plan today?
No,
just so we can
So
address
funeral
that question
insurance is
quickly.
allowed. You can have funeral insurance, and it's not going to affect Medicaid eligibility. And it's designed, if you're buying specifically funeral insurance, it's a there is a caveat in the Social Security manual to allow people to have funeral insurance and still keep their benefits. Is that the question that they had, or did they just want me to
Yes,
do a?
I believe so, but if that was helpful, just let us know. But we'll go ahead and continue on. So please, again, everyone, continue to put in your questions. So thank you, Eric.
Sure. So this, I know this picture looks incredibly busy. I was struggling to find a way to get this on one slide so I could explain it without hopping between slides. So bear with me. Some of you may have done some or all of this already. For those of you that have not, I'm going to walk you through from the time you get a diagnosis to when your child leaves school and is living on their own or potentially living on their own. So as soon as you get the diagnosis, you want to apply for a waiver. And this goes for any families you have that you know that may have younger children, even if you've already applied for a waiver. So if you've already applied for the DDA waiver, there's really no, and you've been approved, there's nothing else for you to do. You're either future need or you're currently receiving supports. So you apply for the DDA waiver. At the same time, you're going to want to get your estate plan done. When you do an estate plan, it's not enough to say I have a special needs trust. You have to start talking about how are you going to fund that trust. And that's where life insurance comes in. Life insurance is not the only way to put money into a trust. It's just, in my professional opinion, the most efficient way to do it because you get a lot of money into the trust for relatively low cost to you. Other ways that you can put money into the trust is you could be putting real estate in there. You could put your house in there. You can put investments into a trust. There's a lot of different things that you can put into a special needs trust. I just highlight life insurance because it is the most cost effective. You'll also want to complete a letter of intent. To be perfectly transparent, I have not completed my letter of intent because it's a very large document. It's a living document, so it's going to change as you go on. The purpose of the letter of intent is to let people, whoever comes behind you to help your child, understand who your child is, what they like to do, and help them see your child as the person that they are, because a lot of the estate planning documents are very cold and unfeeling. That's just the way they are. So the letter of intent allows you to create a picture, a more complete picture of your child as a person. With the diagnosis, there could be treatment options that are needed. It could be behavior treatment, speech, whatever. You're going to want to look into those. When they're in their school, you're going to want to consider, do they need an IEP or 504 plan? Perhaps they need private placement. Then you're going to, at age 12, 13, you want to start thinking about transition. At age 14 in Maryland, the schools are going to start talking to you about transition. I'm still finding parents who are not really seriously getting involved with transition until 17, 18. And I'm telling you, when the schools start talking to you at 14, you need to take it seriously. And I know, just looking at this picture, how many other things parents have going on in their lives, because this doesn't take into account what if you have a child without a disability who plays sports, or we're in COVID. What if you have one or both spouses who have lost a job? Maybe you're a single parent, you're trying to make ends meet, and you're doing everything you can. So I totally get the feeling of treading water, but transition is really important because you only have one chance at it. And you really want to make sure you stay ahead or equal to what's going on. If you wait too long and you get behind that eight ball, it becomes overwhelming and it's really hard to dig out. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I just want to be real. So you are, when you start looking at transition planning, I have on here resource fairs. A lot of them are virtual now. You don't have to wait till your child is transition age. What I found when I started attending transition fairs as a parent, because I go more as a parent than I do as a vendor, I'm still taking things away. Every time I go, my brain is in a different place and I'm learning something new. because I'll get so much information. Very often it's too much for me to take in all at once. So that repeated exposure by going to resource fair after resource fair gives me a better complete picture of what I need to be focused on. Along with transition planning, you're going to have a conversation with your school and your child's teachers about certificate or diploma track. At age 14, 15, you should be reaching out to the Department of Rehabilitative Services, DOORS, for pre-employment transition services. This is to help your child start learning the skills that they're going to need when they enter the workforce. You don't have to wait till your child's 18. Very often, DOORS can help you get your child a job over the summer, getting a salary and making some money, and you can put that money into an ABLE account. It's a really great opportunity to see what's out there and start educating yourself on all the different things that DOORS can do for you. It's another one of those scenarios where the more exposure, the better, because there's a lot that DOORS does that I even in myself included, I don't think people truly understand. So the more you work with DOORS, the more you talk to your DOORS counselor, the more they get a feel for who your child is, what your child is capable of, what your child may be capable of if you push them a little bit. These are all things that are going to help you make this transition as smoothly as possible. Now, what I'm not going to tell you is that this is going to be easy or fun, because some of it can be stressful. I'm a single dad. I'm telling you, some of it gets stressful, but it's a short-term pain, and you've been through harder things. So as long as you can focus on that and remember that no matter how much stress you're feeling right now, this too shall pass, and just push through it. And that's why you have the Archdiocese and the Arc of Prince George's County and PG community resources, because this is a group of a community for you to reach out to and lean on, because there are going to be people in this community, in these communities, who have been there and done that and come through to the other side, that are going to be able to be that support. And by the same token, when you're done, you're going to be able to turn around and give somebody else that hand up. So I have on here, update the estate plan. This is not, I really hope people aren't doing this at age 5 and then ignoring it till age 18. You should be coming back to revisit it every 3-4 years, or if something significant happens. But if you have not, because life gets in the way, I didn't, my wife and I, before she died, we did all the estate planning for me because I would deploy. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. We didn't do anything for her. So I'm not sitting here in judgment saying, if you didn't do it, you're evil or you're bad. I'm saying I didn't do it. It sucked. Don't make the mistakes I made. So at 18, the child becomes an adult. This changes a lot of different things. Now they become eligible for SSI on their own benefit, meaning when a child is under the age of 18 and you apply for SSI, Social Security is going to want to know how much money are the parents making and how much assets do the parents have? How much money do they have in bank accounts? Things like that. When a child turns 18, all that changes. You can apply for SSI the month if your child turns 18 November 30th, you can apply for SSI on November 1st. And expect it to take 3 to 4 months or longer for them to process it. Expect it to be denied. Very often, I would say 60-70% of the applications that I've seen get submitted are denied the first time around. The other thing I want you to expect is you're going to get a letter saying that your child has been denied for Social Security disability income, and you're going to say, like I said, well, I didn't apply for SSDI. In the case of my son, why is he being denied? Your child is being denied because they're looking at both. They will automatically review your child to see if your child has work history. So when you get that first denial letter for SSDI, don't freak out. I did, but you don't have to. So that's SSI. That's when, if you haven't set up an ABLE account and your child has money in their name, you're going to want to move the money from their name into an ABLE account before you apply. when the child is approved for SSI, they're automatically going to receive Medicaid. Now, when I came up here way at the beginning, I said apply for the Medicaid waiver as soon as you get the diagnosis. Your child does not have to be receiving Medicaid to apply for DDA services. Your child does have to be approved for Medicaid before they will receive DDA services. So you can apply without Medicaid. You cannot receive services until you have Medicaid. And in Maryland, DDA doesn't typically start until age 21, 22 when your child leaves school, unless there's a crisis, like a parent dies or something significant. So now you're thinking, is my child going to go to college or not? And there's no right answer there. In Maryland community colleges, if you have a child who is receiving Social Security, SSI or SSDI, they do not pay any tuition for Maryland community colleges. So they can go to college for free if they're receiving SSI, SSDI. Another resource for students going to college is the college living experience that can help children pursuing a degree or they want that education. It's no right or wrong answer. Your child does not have to go to college to be successful. There are a lot of trades, there are a lot of other ways where you can have different learners go through and get it, and be successful without going to college. So don't feel lost if your child is not doing very well academically in a school environment. There are other ways they may be successful. So one other thing I don't remember if I covered, when they turn 18, if you have somebody who was uh, born as a male, regardless of how they identify now, if they were born male at 18, they have to register for the selective service. And because if you do not register for selective service, you could be jeopardizing federal benefits and some state benefits, like getting a job with the federal government, getting a job with the state. These are opportunities that you don't want to miss out on, especially if you decide later on that you're thinking of using Project Search in the last couple of years or something similar, because many of Project Search's contracts are going to be with government agencies. So you definitely want to make sure you register for selective service. As your child is leaving high school, now the child is 21, 22, leaves high school, the Maryland is unique in that the governor has all of the transitioning youth funded for that first year, meaning the money for their services has already been earmarked in the budget. When your child is approved for DDA, that money is there so they can start receiving services right after they got out of high school. That is not the way it is in every single state in the country. Some states are good, some states aren't so good. Maryland is unique, at least from what I've been able to find, and this is what I do for a living, in that the governor has the money set aside for every student that has been identified having a disability on the transition path. Independent living, when I say independent living, it may mean something different than when other people are thinking about independent living. When I say independent living, and I'm talking about my son, I don't mean that he's going to live by himself forever. I fully expect him to require some type of supports. That support may not come from me, and I really hope it doesn't come from me. I want him to be independent of dad. So my expectation is he's going to have personal supports from DDA. He'll have community supports from DDA. He'll build his own community of support of friends or whatever, and that's how he's going to live independently. I opted to buy a house for him, so when I die, the house will be left to him. I'm going to use life insurance to pay off any mortgage if I die before the house is paid off, and then I'm going to use life insurance to fund his special needs trust to make up any gaps. And then when we go into the next slide, the next slide will really highlight how all of this will work together. And I'm talking really fast, so I apologize. All right, this slide is my best attempt to show you how all of this works together. Everything I've just described, how does it all work for a family? At the very top, we have a couple who are, married, they've got a child with a disability, that's the individual using the wheelchair down here, and they have for purposes of this presentation, they have a second to die policy, meaning they both have to die for the insurance to pay out. Let's follow the line to the left as I'm looking at it. So this it feeds down into special needs trust. So when they die, the special needs trust is going to get the money from the life insurance. This special needs trust needs a trustee. So when you're thinking about setting up a special needs trust, you have to identify who that trustee is going to be. The trustee does not have to be the money manager. Very often it is, because a lot of families don't have financial advisors. A lot of families don't have a lot of money until the life insurance pays out, but it's not necessary. You can use a pooled trust, which is a nonprofit, and they can serve as trustee and money manager, and they can control where the money from the trust goes. So that's all a trustee does, is all that money that's sitting in the trust, somebody has to control how that money is spent. Where is it going? And the way they're going to control how that money is spent is by the trust document that you have written up with the attorney. So it's really important that you are clear about how you want your money to benefit your child. You can't just, it's not as simple as saying, just throw it in there and take care of my child. That's too broad. You're giving the trustee room for them to decide that it's not really what the child needs. So if your child is 30 and still plays with Legos, then you want them to be able to spend money on Legos, you need to spell that out, because the trustee may decide, well, the child's 30. What 30-year-old plays with Legos? So, I mean, that's an example where don't rely on a trustee to make the best decision for your child, because the trustee is going to definitely do it in terms of health and wellness. It's easy for the trustee to say, well, that is obviously what's good for your child for health and wellness. When it gets into the more nuanced, what does your child like to do in their spare time? It's much more difficult for the trustee unless you have something in writing. The trust will be used primarily to buy major purchases. That could be a refrigerator for your house. That could be a new wheelchair. It could be to modify a van, things like that. Bigger expenses, a couple $1,000s or more is what I like people to think about. You want to minimize how much comes out of the trust, because every time you have the trustee do something with the money in the trust, it's going to cost you money. The trustee is going to charge for making distributions or taking money out of the trust. So you want to minimize how often that has to happen. The way I encourage people to minimize it is by having an ABLE account and putting the maximum amount of money you can into the ABLE account every January. So in 2020, you can put $15,000 into the ABLE account. So I would have you take a distribution from the Special Needs Trust to the ABLE account with $15,000. Well, what if your child is working? Well, that's not a problem, because they can put in up to an additional, I think it's $12,340. It's 12,000 some change from their salary into their ABLE account, even if you've already put the $15,000 in. So, that's a great option, because they can still work, they can still enjoy working, enjoy the freedom, enjoy that sense of accomplishment, have that money they're earning, put it into an ABLE account, save it for themselves, and benefit from it. And then additionally, that $15,000 that you have the trust putting into the ABLE account can be used to pay for rent, or it can be used to, it's got to be a qualified disability expense, so it can't be used for a vacation. What it could do, if you have a child who requires an aid, to maybe they need somebody to help them if they're going to Florida and they go to the beach, they need somebody to help them get to and from the beach, help them get around. The airline tickets for the aid, the hotel room for the aid, all of that can be paid for by the ABLE account, because that is a qualified disability expense. The disability expense is what is required for your child to have the same type of life that they would have without the disability. So they can do a vacation with a disability or without a disability. That's not impacted by their disability. Needing somebody to help you take that vacation is a direct impact of your disability. And that's why you can use the ABLE account to pay for the aid, and you would have to use the trust to pay for the vacation. I hope that's helpful. This gets really tricky, and I would rather have people err on the side of caution. Then when we come over here to the other side of it, you have Social Security. So that is going to be the disabled adult child benefit if they're eligible, if they qualified. You're not going to get paid off of both parents. You're going to get paid off the benefit of the higher earnings, whichever parent made more money. Right now, because I'm widowed, my son is receiving disabled adult child benefit from my wife based on her account, and he's receiving SSI because she didn't earn that much. She was a stay-at-home mom. When I die, my son will receive all of my Social Security, 50%, 75% of my Social Security, 50% when I retire, 75% when I die. This is important when you're doing your retirement planning, because you need to think about when are you going to start collecting Social Security. If you take it early, you're not just hurting yourself potentially, you could be impacting your child down the road, because now if you could have received $2,000 a month, but instead you took it at $1,500 a month because you figure I don't need that extra $500. Well, your child's only going to get $750 instead of $1,000. And you take that over the next 30, 40 years for your child, that's a lot of money. It really adds up. Your child's health insurance will be covered by Medicaid and Medicare. That's what those two buttons are. And then the waiver supports will provide potentially residential. Maybe they're giving the child a place to live. Maybe they're providing personal support, somebody to help live in that house independently. Or they could be helping with vocational, because DOORS is a short-term solution for 6 months or less. They get you a job, and then they give you a job coach for up to 6 months, and then they phase out. However, if you have a DDA provider and you're using the DDA waiver, that vocational support could be there much longer. So that is the speed round of everything of how to tie all the dots together. And I understand it's incredibly complicated. I mean, I was sharing before this presentation. I gave a very similar presentation, took about 2 hours. So I want to introduce the topic and the ideas to you. I want you to get familiar with this. I want you to understand why it's so important to plan, even though it's not very much fun to plan. And understand that when you're planning for your retirement, I really think you should be planning that at some point you are going to stop working. At some point you are going to stop caring for your child in terms of a caregiver, not as a parent. You're never going to stop loving your child, but I don't want you to continue being the caregiver of your child. And here's why. At some point, the hope is, as morbid as it sounds, your child outlives you. If the child outlives you and you're the only caregiver they've ever known, how much more impactful, how much more impacted are they going to be when they're in their 40s or 50s trying to get used to a new caregiver, right? I mean, versus you help them make that transition in their 20s or 30s, and you're there for them, and then gradually you step back and you stay more of a parent and less of a caregiver. So I don't know how that's going to get how people feel about that, but it's what I try to recommend. So again, I went through that really quickly.
We do have many questions, but I know our next slide has not only the website, but also your email as well. Because we've had several questions about handouts and about this information being available. And I do want to, again, note in the handout section, which will be on your control panel, there's a PDF version of this PowerPoint, which again has your contact information and website as well. And are there some info sheets kind of quick fact sheets available as well on the Special Needs Navigator website?
Not fact sheets. I've done a YouTube channel
Hmm.
where, if you get to the website, you can go to the YouTube channel, or you can look for Special Needs Navigator on YouTube. And I've done a lot of 8 to 10 minute videos where I do a deeper dive into the earned income exclusion if you're working with SSI, or what are the four parts of Medicare, and then I have longer interviews with professionals. But yeah, so I'm trying to capture a lot of this and do shorter videos where people can watch it at their pace.
Great. And Eric, I know you're going to stay on with us, and what we'll do is we will go ahead, and again, we have many questions, of course, and so please continue, and we will address those questions in our time. But before we do that, we would like to going to try to bring Lakeisha in, who's going to talk actually kind of about a puzzle piece to this whole program. So if we could have the next slide, and I will unmute Lakeisha here to explain uh, about this very important step as well in this whole piece of connecting the dots, which of course is employment. Lakeisha, we're so glad you could join us for we're calling this our commercial break.
Yes,
As
thank
people
you
are
so
putting
much.
questions. Okay, thank you, Lakeisha, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Eric, for that information. That's very valuable information as well. So, excuse me. I am the recruitment and outreach specialist for the Employ Prince George's Keys program. And what we are a workforce development and training program for young adults in Prince George's County, ages 18 to 24. And our services are free to these young adults in this age range. They must be Prince George's County residents, but we prepare them to be active and ready for the workforce. So we have a 6 week, the program is a year-long program. We have 6 weeks of employability and training seminars. During that, all our participants get to decide if they want to do on the job training after their 6 weeks, or if they want to receive a accreditation or a certification, let's say in IT, or they may want to be a phlebotomist, or they may have interest in something in HVAC or automotive. They can choose either track that they want to go on in, and they do that for 10 weeks, and that is also all paid for by Keys. We pay for their internship. If they decide that they want to get a certification, we pay for the tuition, the books. If they need transportation assistance, we provide that as well. After they complete their 10-week internship or training, then we go on and look for them for a minimum of 25-hour per week employment. That's our minimum, but they may receive a full-time position. So we work with them to figure out where their career interest lies. And we have several connections throughout DC, Maryland, and Virginia with employers that are willing to work with our population of young adults who we work with very specific barriers. So they've never worked before, they could be pregnant or parenting, they could have involvement with the justice system. So we have a very specific target that we work with. And again, our young adults all have to be Prince George's County residents, but this is a free resource that we're offering to young adults in Prince George's County. We want the parents to know, aunts and uncles to know, grandparents to know that they can, head over to employprincegeorges.org, and we offer many services under the umbrella of Employ PG, but we are the youth services division. And also, I can put my direct information in the chat for those who may have young adults who would be interested in the program, or other organizations that would like to collab with us, employers that may have job opportunities. But again, this is a free resource that we provide to the young adults of Prince George's County, and they also receive a bi-weekly stipend to attend.
So thank you, Lakeisha, so much while people were typing that questions, because this again is a puzzle piece for that overall plan for our loved one living with disabilities. And I know the KEYS program also works with many youth as well, in addition to those living with disabilities. So
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lakeisha. And we did have one page of this as a handout and as well, but if you can also put your contact information, that way people can connect with you. So thank you again so much, Lakeisha, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So as we just wanted to share, and I think this might address some people had many questions about more information. So the ARC Prince George's County, again, is offering two types of events. We were talking about ABLE accounts. I think people would be very interested in hearing that. The ARC is going to have the coordinator for Maryland ABLE as a guest speaker on November 19th. And this is available as a handout with our webinar. So please take part in that to hear more. Eric just touched on that briefly, but this will go into more detail of that. And also the Benefits Enrollment Center for our Prince George's County youth. I know we're focusing on some resources in Prince George's County, but again, the ARC Prince George's County can help your young person look at anything else they might be eligible for, maybe food stamps, free cell phones. So overall plan for that. Also upcoming events, again, as people are typing in their questions, we do have, for those still in the school system, loved one, a very important discussion on how COVID has impacted that. And again, this is available as a handout with this webinar, so you can join that. And they are having the, I want to make sure, Trinell Bowman, the Associate Superintendent for Special Education for Prince George's County Public Schools, and of course, our very own Melanie Clark. So please take that opportunity to speak directly with leaders in our school system to hear how COVID has impacted that. And also for Prince George's community resources, again, continuing to offer cooking classes from your home and among other offerings. So please connect with Pam Rosansky at Prince George's Community Resources for more information, not only on the cooking classes, but also bingo, again, virtual bingo as well on Tuesdays. So I know everyone is anxious, Eric, so we have some time for many questions. So let's get to it here. Okay, I'm sorry, Mary. Mary's with us as well.
Sorry to interrupt you, Rachel. We have had one question that has been repeated in a few different ways, and that, Eric, is specifically about how to procure funeral insurance, but even specifically for persons with disabilities themselves. And the question was, again, specific to those who are not able to speak.
So people that are, so individuals that are perhaps nonverbal or may not qualify for other insurance. So there's one company I work with. I mean, I want to be clear, are they asking who to get it from, or are they asking to talk about it?
That's a very good question. How to get funeral insurance for disabled person who cannot speak?
So I have found one company that is able to get funeral insurance for anybody regardless of the disability, and it's a company called Special Considerations. You know, that's the name of their company. I'm happy to email you a link to a link to their website so you can send it out to participants. But they're the only company I've found that, regardless of the type of disability somebody has, they're able to get funeral insurance. And I want to be clear, it's funeral insurance. It's not a large amount of death benefit. It's meant to cover final expenses. That's it.
Eric, there's also a question here about how can you provide suggestions for any life insurance companies that could potentially insure an individual with a mental health condition, or a suggested way to obtain coverage, given that obtaining coverage can be problematic?
Again, I would probably defer back to final expenses, you know, where with special considerations, because if you're looking for, I'm not a big fan of owning life insurance as an investment. I know there's people out there who are selling it as a way to help you fund your retirement or something like that. That's, to me, life insurance is a tool to manage risk. And if you have somebody who has a diagnosis that makes it problematic or very difficult to get any other type of life insurance, I typically send people to special considerations. And I'll see if I can pull them up and put their website in the chat. Sounds like there's a lot of interest in this.
An additional question regarding funeral insurance, just your opinion on whether or not it's a great idea to go ahead and buy it.
We're all going to die. With that being said, and I'm being kind of flippant, it's, if you haven't done any planning for yourself, if you don't have an estate plan, if you don't have a special needs trust, if you don't have a will for you, if you haven't done any planning for you and you're worrying about a final expense plan for your child, I think your priorities are in the wrong place. So to be candid. But if you've done all that, then yes, I mean, I think it can make sense to go ahead and get yourself a policy.
Eric, there's also
your child a policy
regarding community college and receiving SSI. The question is about whether or not, if you are receiving SSI to cover the cost of community college, must you attend the community college in the county where you reside?
No, you don't have to. You're not. You do not have to attend the community college in the county you reside. It has to be a community college in Maryland, and it's not SSI paying for the college. It's a benefit that if you're receiving SSI, they're just waiving tuition.
And we should note that you may still have to pay a fee. I've noticed that with that. Yeah. So, but it's a great benefit if people, if their son or daughter is interested in doing that. Thank you for pointing that out, because that can help them to take things to enhance reading skills, maybe, if they're interested in IT. But they might have to still pay the fee. It only waives the tuition, but it's still an incredible benefit. So that was a good question the person had. Thank you, Mary.
Eric, there's also a question asking you to clarify about the trust document. Is that the same or a substitute for a letter of intent?
It's not the same, nor is it a substitute. The trust document is the legal document that is going to establish the special needs trust, identify who the trustee is, and spell out what the trustee can do with the money in the trust. The letter of intent is for who your child is. I mean, maybe your child likes spaghetti but no sauce. Maybe your child needs to sleep with the light on. Things that make your child unique that maybe most people, if they weren't living with your child 24/7, maybe they wouldn't know about.
And I know we were talking about some resources, and I would also encourage people to go to the ARC, and they have many templates available. I mean, it's one of, I'm sure there's others, but the ARC, the National ARC, has a complete tab about letters of intent, and exactly what Eric's mentioning. You're just documenting many things about your loved one. So I encourage everyone to visit the ARC national website. There may be others if someone wants to share that with us. They have excellent templates to use for all of those things that you're speaking of, where you're documenting it.
In addition, Rachel, Melanie wanted to share that this will also be posted on the Arc of Prince George's County's website. So she will be posting this presentation there as well, and there will be information in the local ARC as well.
Excellent.
There's a question, Eric, wondering if you could please mention and name that website regarding finding an attorney to help with special needs trust. Could you repeat that information?
Sure, it's the Academy of Special Needs Planners. I'm typing it into the chat box too.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, this is one resource. It's not the resource. You know, the advantage here is there's a lot of attorneys in Maryland, and I'm willing to bet that the ARC or PGCR or the Archdiocese can connect people with, because I'm sure they have relationships with attorneys who do special needs planning in PG County. You want to make sure you're working with an attorney who, just bear with me while I'm typing this in the chat so I don't forget. You want to make sure you're working with an attorney who understands special needs. You don't want to work with an attorney who maybe they do one special needs trust a year. Because you're going to hear attorneys tell you, oh, I can do that. So you want to ask them, how many have you done? It's not something that I would take lightly. I mean, if it's not done properly, your child's benefits could be jeopardized. So you want to work with somebody who does a lot of special needs trusts, a lot, or elder law planning. And reasons I say elder law planning is because you're going to be familiar with special needs trusts too. So those are the key phrases: elder law planning or special needs planning for when you're talking to an attorney.
And I see too, we had Mary a specific question on someone needing a special needs trust, and there's several that Eric mentioned, and there are some nonprofit providers. Yep. Just to mention a resource, which is the ARC Northern Virginia, and everyone should always explore those for themselves to determine if that's going to work for their needs. I know the ARC Northern Virginia is a nonprofit that also works with Maryland residents on, I believe theirs is the Special Needs Pool Trust.
Yeah, I put two others in there too. You have First Maryland Disability. We're really lucky in that Maryland has several resources for pooled trusts. You have First Maryland Disability, which is in Maryland. You have the ARC Northern Virginia with Tia Marsili down in Virginia, who does, as you said, Rachel, she does do a lot of work in Maryland. And then you have Shared Horizons in DC, which does. So we have a lot of resources here in Maryland.
Yes, and we've had Shared Horizons come to our brunch, and we can certainly invite them again, because there was a question, I believe, Mary, as well, is about explaining those terms, third party and special needs and pool trusts. So if I can ask that person, if we can bring on a speaker again for our brunch, it's a great idea, and that way we can really spend a lot of time on one full session on that, if you agree, Eric. It was a good question, yeah. But if we can just ask that person, thank you for that question, but if we can stay connected with us, we will bring that to our brunch as well. And they really explain it very well. Shared Horizons is one and ARC Northern Virginia. So if that person doesn't mind, we will definitely have a speaker that can really break that down, because that's a full presentation. I think you would agree, right, Eric?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And an important piece in what we're talking about with connecting the dots. I know that sometimes relatives in their good heart might leave a loved one their money, like the distant uncle or the, you know, the great aunt, and then that kind of can throw people off in their benefits. So it's important to kind of plan all these pieces together.
Eric, one of the pieces that there's a question about is in having a trust administrator. The question was about having this individual has a close relative that will serve as their child's trustee. Do you recommend also having a trust administrator who reviews and makes fund distributions or disbursements?
I'm typically, my preference is when I'm working with families is to have a corporate trustee and then have a family member, if they have somebody who wants to be involved, have the family member be what's known as a trust protector. So when you tell me, and it could just be terminology, but when I hear trust administrator, what that means to me is somebody who's working for a corporate trust company or a pooled trust company, and they are serving they're serving a administrative role within that company. When you have a family member serving as trustee, I'm not sure how you would put somebody in the middle between the family member and the trust to serve as an administrator. It's either, and this is where, to Rachel's point about having shared horizons come back, this is, I'm not an attorney. I'm not as well versed in the legal aspects. It's just my understanding was, a corporate trustee may have a trust administrator who's running things, and then a family member may be a co-trustee or a trust protector. But to have a family member have a trust administrator, I'm just not sure how you would do that.
Okay, so and I think it sounds like we're definitely going to have a brunch bunch on special needs trusts again, which is, I think, Eric, you put it out very early on that even if you've gone to that before, go again, right? And as you're changing and your loved one is changing, to hear that information. So please, everyone, thank you for that. That's what we like about the brunch bunch, is hearing what your needs are, so we can bring that information in.
Eric, there's one additional question asking if there is a website to get more information on community college free tuition or SSI, SSDI recipients.
Yes, is the short answer. That one I don't have off the top of my head, though. I'll have to email it to you.
And I think too, as well, if that was regarding the community college, right, Mary?
Yes.
Yes, and I know that several of our community colleges in Maryland also have, it might be, sometimes they say disability support services. They might have different terms, but definitely that's an office to reach out to as well, as you're beginning to think about that. I know sometimes they say a special supports office. It might be a little challenging because they don't all use the same name, but definitely student support services, something along those lines. Unfortunately, they don't use all the same names. But
there you go.
I know we're coming up right to the end. There's one question here, recognizing that this webinar is not specifically about guardianship, but asking about difficulty obtaining guardianship for a 24-year-old son. Are there any attorneys or resources for getting assistance with that?
Yes, there are. The attorneys are going to be the same attorneys that you're going to want to use when you're looking for a special needs trust. So you're looking for an attorney who's familiar with either elder law or special needs planning. Now, there are going to be, if you go on Facebook or you talk to other parents, there are going to be people that tell you that you can do this on your own. I do not encourage you to do this on your own, because taking guardianship of an individual is a very significant step. And I really think there's a lot to be said to talk to an attorney to understand what you're doing when you take guardianship. The really quick overview, I am my son's legal guardian. I've been my son's legal guardian for about 3 years now. when you apply for guardianship, the courts will appoint an attorney to come visit your child to get to see if your child, ultimately to determine is your child truly disabled to the point where they are incapable of making a decision, or do they want you involved in their decision-making process? Because they're going to ask the child, do you understand? Do you want your, then you're going to go to court, and the courts will either find in your favor or not. And if you are the guardian of the person, you have to file an annual report of every year in Maryland. You file a report for what's been done for your child. And you have guardian of the person, which is you're making all the decisions for your child. That's healthcare, everything. And then you have guardian of the property, which is you make all the financial decisions. It sounds like if you're thinking about guardianship, you're looking for guardianship of the person. And this is, again, why you would want to talk to an attorney to really make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into.
Thank you so much, Eric. I can't believe how quickly our time has gone here with our brunch. And I'd like to thank all of our participants today for asking kind of broad questions, because I think this points to that piece about connecting the dots. It's not just one aspect. We also have to think about our own retirement, right? Our own needs planning as the caregiver and our loved one. So I encourage everyone to stay connected with the ARC Prince George's County or your local ARC chapter. Again, the ARC Prince George's is very timely, having a session about ABLE accounts. Also, the ARC Prince George's County offers the Take Control Summit, which I see Melanie has put in our question box. And it has a guide there as well for special needs trust lawyers. Thank you, Melanie, for that. And then I saw some questions about handouts. So we encourage you to go to the Special Needs Navigator website for more information. We didn't have a lot of handouts on all the terms today, so I apologize. But I thank you, Eric, for having some YouTube videos and other ways people can learn, because you have to hear it several times, as we know. So thank you again for joining us today, Eric, as we plan not only for our loved one, but for ourselves, and how important that is. And I'd like to thank Lakeisha again for coming on to talk about one piece of this connecting the dots, which is employment. We were talking about multiple sources of income, and that helps our loved one to also continue with their best life when they're able to be employed and get income. So please, we look forward to being again next month, November. Please stay tuned for details on the date for our November Brunch Bunch, as we're trying to confirm our speaker. And again, let us all remain safe and remain hopeful that we can be together again soon. So thank you again, Eric, and thank you, Mary, for our help.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.